So in Buddhism, right now, currently you can divide Buddhism into three three major schools, three big umbrella. The the first one is Theravada. Theravada is the original style practice of the Buddha. So they most of country like in Sri Lanka, Burma, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, they practice in terms of Theravada. So that means they will go armed round. They live some I don't know. Some will still live in big monastery like in Thailand, Argentina. They live in big monastery. Whether they do armed round or not, I'm not sure. But basically, they don't do any cooking. Lay person or donation come in, and they strictly observe the precept or the discipline, the rule, and they will practice based on the set of Sutra in Pali. And either some, and of course in that Theravada there are sub different school. One will concentrate more in samadhi, which is concentration, the other vipassana, or maybe some is both. Vipassana is like the way you develop the wisdom. So that's Theravada. And then another big umbrella is Mahayana. Mahayana is equivalent to they call big wheel, because the doctrine or the Dharma they teach is emphasis on Bodhisattva. The Bodhisattva is partially the way is the path that they in Mahayana they believe the Bodhisattva is the path that lead to Buddhahood. Why? And now this is the argument in Theravada, Mahayana school. They say Theravada school, what you practice is the teaching of the Buddha based on the Sutra in Pali, and that's mostly tell you about impermanence, Four Noble Truths, a form path, a noble form path, and that will lead to the liberation of suffering, nirvana. And the highest state that you attain is Arahant, is the one that complete liberation, and the Buddha himself is Arahant. What we call is the great Arahant, but they is different from his student. Those the disciple, they attain the Arahanthood, but in term compared to the Buddha, they not complete wholesome in terms of knowledge and wisdom. In terms of virtue, it's not wholesome compared to the Buddha. The Buddha himself is wholesome not only in the wisdom, but in terms of virtue and practice. So there is a difference, and the Buddha himself in Sutra say there is difference between the Buddha and the other. It's just you liberate, but there is a different degree in wisdom. Like one example is Arahant. They might still have some habit. Now, like for example, in one sutra they say one monk become Arahant, but he have so many past life. He live in a very rich family, like a noble one. So his habit is a condescendent to the other people. Like there is one story say when he crossed the river, so there is a god that control that river. So he called the god to basically let him go through. And what he say is a little man, like it's just the wording. He say little man, let me help me go through. And that saying really upset the god that in charge of that river. So he come and complain with the Buddha, say, this monk, not use a nice word. So Buddha called him in and say, are you have any meaning? Like, no, say I'm not have any meaning. Negative term, negative emotion to that God. And then the Buddha say, well, then you should apologize to the God in charge of the river and say, little man, I'm sorry. So the Buddha say, well, it's just that because his past life so long that he in the rich family, noble one, that he inhabit of saying that word, but he doesn't have any meaning to those. So those is like the even though he's arrogant, but there's still habit that he's not have intention to doing that, but still it's habit. So that's what I mean in terms of virtue and wisdom. So in Mahayana, there's those follow that path say the path of Bodhisattva will keep you in the realm of birth cycle. You keep in that realm because the ultimate goal, their path is reach the Buddhahood. And and what they practice is they don't see the difference between the birth cycle, the cycle of rebirth, and the nirvana, because by itself the nirvana, the recycle of birth is the nirvana within this. So they don't see the distinction, there's separation between the cycle of the birth cycle, the cycle of rebirth and the nirvana. And by using that path, they will through many lives, practice that, improve your virtue and your wisdom, and eventually you will reach the Buddha. So that's their ultimate goal is the Buddhahood, not the arahant. They make a distinction between the arahant and the Buddha. So within the Mahayana, there's different schools. Zen is one part under that Mahayana, and Tibet is another using mantra, which is a word that you don't really understand what is. It's like a secret wording. If you know the Heart Sutra, the very last one is the mantra, like paramata, go past, those the mantra that you just repeat without it have mystic power in that. Umbani Batnihum is just another phrase of mantra. It does have meaning, but for ordinary person, it's a meaning that we don't understand, and they using that to I'm not in that school, so I don't know much, but they using mantra to recite the mantra. Those they and then the other school based on different principle like independent origination, different based on different sutra. But the main thing in Mahayana school is they emphasize a lot on the Heart Sutra. The Heart Sutra talking about the emptiness of the nature, emptiness of phenomena. And I think we already discussed that in terms of interdependent origination. and we look at the way you look at in terms of spatial view, then everything come together by itself. There's no self, and that's in terms of emptiness. And from my point of view, is like Theravada look at the impermanent view, the time dimension. That's why a lot of sutra in Pali, Canon, is talking about impermanent. The very first discourse the Buddha gave is the Four Golden Truths is impermanent, and the very last discourse when he entered Paranirvana is also emphasis in impermanent. Because I think the point of the Buddha view is for us, it's easier to see things change, things arise and then cease. So observe the change in phenomena over the time, and you can see things arise, things constantly change, unstable, and then at the end it ceases. And that's reflect the impermanent. And by that, it helps you to detach. It's let go easier because everything change, and there's no point to hold on things that change. If you wish something not change, cause you suffering, right? If you think you want to live long time, well, that is against the law of impermanence. Then what you desire, you cannot have that, and that leads to suffering. So that's why I think from Theravada, the Buddha emphasizes a lot in impermanence, and using that for your training and see the Dharma. Well, that's the Dharma. Dharma is the way the thing is, and the conditioned phenomenon is impermanent. When we say conditioned phenomenon, it's impermanent. And the three main mark or characteristic of conditioned phenomena is impermanence, which lead to suffering, dissatisfaction, and then it lead to non-self or not-self. That's the three mark, main characteristics. The third one in non-self. Non-self. Yes. What we say, selfless or essentialless, essenceless. So that's the three key thing in three mark. So that's why I think it's easier for the most of the sutra in Pali Canon, Agama, in Theravada school, Mahayana school, they will talk about impermanence is the key thing, and interdependent origination is also a key principle in Theravada. I think it's more practical for us to observe, like the Buddha talking about five senses, the way you perceive the world through five senses. So five sense based. I don't know whether you know about five sense based. Through your eyes, right? Yeah. Your eyes, your ear, your nose, your tongue, your body, and your mind, to experience the world outside. And then he will using five aggregate, talking about five aggregate, talking more related to human being, more in terms of the body and mind. And the body itself is form, and then the other four components of the aggregate is feeling, perception, and then mental formation and consciousness. So those four things in the five aggregate is belong to the mind component, and then the form or the body. That's why we talking, who are we? The very basic question, right? Who are we? That's a big question. And how you answer that? Who are you? So most of the people will say, okay, we are composed of two things, right? The body our physical body and the mind, immaterial thing. We know it. There's no substance associated with that. That's why the Buddha will break it down. What you perceive a human being is just a concept. It's actually no self. By breakdown, say you have a body and a mind. Then he go further break down. Okay, this body actually composed of 4 basic elements, which is, earth, water, fire, and wind. Well, at that time, that's what you describe this body. But now with science, you can tell it's composed a lot of different cells. But if you look at the cell, it's basically that, right? Solid thing, composed of solid material, and then liquid thing, and then wind moving, and then heat produced to sustain life. So those is the main concept to describe this body. The main thing I think the Buddha tried to do is break down the concept of cell. The cell that we create or we cling to it. By breaking it down, by introduce you to the interdependent origin, is entity, a new phenomenon emerged from the existing one. And the existing one is the 4 basic element, 4 basic component. And you just assume that those components come together. We're talking about that last time, right? When you look at the rose, the flower, it's composed different components. The petal, the stem, the leaf. And by happen, it come together. When you move, it moves together. It operates in certain way. When you look in detail, you see a detailed individual component. But then when you look at the whole view, the overall form, that's most of the time we associate with that. And we create a concept named rose. But those are the concepts the mind create, and that's a very thing you need to aware of. The same thing, the concept, the body, it's just the billion cells composed of this body formed together. Well, you see the overall thing, the overall view of the body is working certain way, is behave in certain way. You label it body. The same thing, the Buddha tried to break down the concept of cell that you try to cling on. And then the same thing, he addressed the mind. What you think a mind is just normal, it's different component. Like the mind can feel, right? The mind can have emotion, can feel the emotion. It can perceive things around through your sense organs, through your eyes, your ear, your nose, your tongue, your body, and then through consciousness. So he break down different components. So you tell you is the mind itself is just an aggregate. That's why it's aggregate. It's a component. It has no true self, and you can observe things changing. That's why he say a lot of if you read the Sutra, like 4 foundation of mindfulness, and that's what he teach you is observe and see, mindful of your body, mindful of your feeling, mindful of your mind, and mindful of the Dharma. Those 4 foundations that you should focus on mindfulness. So that's in Theravada. I think it's more practical, and I think right now a lot of people, not only in Western country, but like in Theravada school, it's very popular for young age because it's more practical and you can see the result when you apply the technique. Because in the Sutra, the Buddha lists a lot of different techniques how to deal with different thing. I think it's more practical, and I think a lot of people attract to that. It doesn't mean that Mahayana school is not relevant. Actually, it's very deep by itself. But I think it's more in terms of because it's talking about the Heart Sutra, emptiness, nature of things. When you look at, I think when you look at in terms of spatial dimension, like for example, we're talking about our body, it's composed of different cells, right? Different organs. But when you look at things, you just look at, you always look at the overall form, the overall shape of the object, and daily you associate with that. I think that's why it's so hard to break down or get rid abandon the self concept. Is because every day you see the chair, you see different components, but then you always associate the whole thing, the whole state, and you immediately objectify it, right? And then identify it, give it a name. And I think most of the time your mind operates on the concept level instead of go down to a very basic nature of awareness, the pure awareness, by just look at the object without any concept, without any notion that you associate with that. And I think most of the time I try to practice is just go back to your pure awareness, what I call say pure awareness of your very basic nature of knowing. Just look at the object and just what it is. No name, no form, no concept that your mind create to that. I think first couple of years when I trained, I told another monk it's like we practice and we try to behave like children. The more you practice, the more you become like young children. Because if you look at young children, at the very young age, they have no name, right? No idea of the object. They just perceive the thing the way it is. And then later on, when the language develops and when they perceive more, when they interact more with other people, communication, language integrated to there, that's more they lose it or get away from that very basic pure awareness nature. Discrimination, discern, you make judgment, prejudice, all that arise later. I read another article about the psychologists, they do some survey and they talking about whether animals should be treated the same as human. And the very interesting, all the young children less than 12, they say they should. Animals should treat equally like human. The only thing like when children about 12 years old, that's where the answer is different. They say no, human should be treated differently from human. So that's tell you like discrimination, the concept of high, inferior and superior, superior is that's what the dual mind create through discrimination. Why young people they're very naive, very poor. That's why I like children to deal with them. They're very poor. They tell you exactly what they think. There's no lying. Well, they hit you, they don't like it, they hit you. Of course, the difference between us when we, in the reverse process, we know it and we let it go instead of the young child, they react poorly on the emotion. Versus here we train, we aware of our emotion and what going on our mind. And we be able to detach that through wisdom, through insight. But then we go back to the same thing, go back to the very poor awareness and poor knowing nature. So I think I deviate from your very question. So the mantra, the same thing, different topic. So if using mantra, like another school in Mahayana, they call Pure Land Buddhism, where they recite the Amita, is it Amita Buddha? That's another set of sutra talking about there's a realm of Amita Buddha by recite his name and by practice his certain thing. Then when at the end of your life will you go to his realm and then continue your training there. So that's why people will recite Amita Buddha name, recite the Buddha name, same thing mantra, I believe. So and the Zen school is a little bit different. The Zen school, I think, in a way, it's go very direct. I think the Zen is very hard. Once you get it, then you get it. And they talk very direct, and they act so weird because the key point of Zen is any attachment, any clinging, they will try to break you off. And they point directly to the nature of awareness, to your nature of knowing, without explanation, because as soon as you open a mouth and to explain, your tendency to attach to that knowing, let's say you know something and you try to understand that knowledge, then the very attachment to that knowledge and the attachment to the understanding is very subtle. I can take one example which I learned from my last retreat. So in the monastery in Vietnam where I trained, the last one I requested for 2-month retreat, because I know I had to go back to US, and in monastery we take turn. The maximum, if you don't have like duty, like if you don't in charge of big thing, like in charge of monk that in charge of reception, usually they have special treatment because their mind have constantly working, deal with lay person, deal with the other thing, so they have longer retreat, usually 2 months to 3 months. For normal monk like us, the maximum is like 49 days, 7 weeks. So for me, because I'm American monk, so they make exception. Especially I have to request like for 2-month retreat. And during those 2-month retreat, well, the history before that is before I don't know anything. Before I become a monk, I know nothing about, it's not nothing, I know very little about Buddhism, even though my mom and my grandmother, both my grandmother, they follow Pure Land Buddhism. But myself, I just have no interest in Buddhism in general. Anyway, so when I become a monk, I come into Zen, and the Zen teach you very strange thing. I mean, they ask you to know the Buddha nature. Well, that's the first concept they introduce. That's the first thing, is you have to recognize your Buddha nature. But instantly you ask, what's the Buddha nature? So you expect, that's the concept, I think that's the they try to convey you have to perceive, you have to know it, but then how can you convey something without saying, right? So they have to say you have to see your, or recognize your Buddha nature, but that concept introduced immediately get your attachment to it. So my interest, my curious, my question is, what is it? And then you try to understand more. Okay, read through different sutra, like different sutra will tell you, okay, Buddha nature, your knowing nature, so I just learned in Zen, but and then Zen will say there's no method for you to practice in Zen, because if you attach to the method, that's the attachment you need to get rid of. So that's why in Zen there's no technique. If you go to the Zen master, say what the technique, here we actually give you the technique by observe your breathing. It's just a technique, but at the end we will tell you let go that technique. Even the technique we tell you at the end is observe the mind. It's just the way to tell you, okay, come back to your knowing nature. And if you're mindful of your knowing nature, you will recognize the rise of your thought and the pass away of your thought, and just let it go. I mean, basically let it go. But then how you get let go? So that's, I think when I come to Zen, it's very frustrating because they don't give you the, I mean, in Theravada school, they tell you, okay, mindfulness of your breathing, right? Mindfulness of your body, mindfulness of, for foundation mindfulness. This the technique. Zen, they don't tell you that. So when I come in, I only have the way that give me a big push become a monk is because I attend the 10-day retreat in Vipassana retreat. That's why I learned a little bit about the technique, and that's why when I decide to become a monk, I envision this is the technique I will apply, even though when I go to this environment, they teach you there's no technique, but underlying I still use my own technique. But once I go there, I realize those techniques in Theravada school cannot apply to the Zen school, because let's pick the breathing, mindful of your breathing. That's like I mentioned about last time. We do daily chore, we do our daily activity, we take care of the garden, we take out the trash, we cook, we do everything. How can you mindful your breathing while you're doing that task? You cannot. It's not right now. I can still mindful my breathing, but at the beginner, your mindful is just mindful you're doing the task. It's difficult enough. Not about both mindful your task and using your technique of breathing. Mindful is impossible for me. So I have a difficulty apply the Theravada technique in the Zen environment, and it's so frustrating that for a couple months I give up, because like in you have to know that in environment like Theravada monastery, they do nothing other than sitting meditation, walking meditation, no cooking, no task to maintain the monastery. But when you move to Mahayana environment, like especially Zen, we do everything. Believe me, we do construction, we build, we carry brick, we pour concrete, we do everything. So for me, doing mindful that is so difficult. So I struggle to apply the Theravada technique within the Zen environment. I cannot. So that's the shaking right there, because I whoops, I already become a monk. And now this technique, I believe I can use it. I cannot now. What can I do? Because you cannot go to the headmaster and say, headmaster, I'm using Theravada technique. How can I correct that? Well, you asked the wrong person. So you have to struggle with how you can apply the technique mindfulness. I mean, even though Theravada in Zen we emphasize on mindfulness, what we say mindfulness of what you're doing, your body and mind are the same. Every teacher tell you that. It's easy to say than to practice. Once I practice for a while, I have to put aside Theravada. I know that you have to develop your mindfulness. The mindfulness, I truly believe that's a foundation of everything. Even though the way Zen explain is different, it's still mindfulness. But they say different things. But how you can improve your mindfulness? How can you develop your mindfulness? How can you train your mindfulness? And even though the word mindfulness is the entire topic, what does mean mindfulness? Last time we talked about what does mean mindfulness. People will tell you different things about mindfulness. So anyway, so before that, I just learned about the sutra like Mahayana Sutra, and they talking about different bodhisattva, different philosophy, and we don't emphasize much on the Pali Canon. We do learn, like impermanent. We know because it's a foundation both for Theravada and Mahayana. The foundation is the same: impermanent, interdependent origination, Four Noble Truth, Eight Noble Form Path, Five Arrogant. We still learn it, but we don't emphasize. We don't talk a lot about that. We talk more in terms of Buddha nature, Nirvana, those big concepts. And that's concept. In Mahayana, emptiness nature is very hard to grasp this. So I took going a while, and what I realized is anybody criticize Zen, it irritates me, it upset me, because I haven't realized that I attached to certain concept in Zen. So anything that people criticize or talk negative about Zen, it bothers me, it annoys me. But during the training, I explore more about, I read more about Sutra, Pali Canon, and there is a conflict. I mean, there is different. You learn in Pali Canon, there's a lot of technique, and then in Zen, there's no technique. It's like, why is that? The same teaching of Buddha, why is emphasis a lot on technique? The other is like, you get rid of all of them. There's no technique. And then in Zen, they talking about, no thought, no thinking, if you read about the platform sutra of Human, the Pakiatri, well, the first thing is Vonim is no thinking. I don't know whether I translate correctly. Because thinking is basically, when you're thinking, is active, it's a mental formation, it's active process, and it is dualism. As long as you make a thought, it falls into dualism. Either it's good or bad, right or wrong. And Zen is emphasis of non-dualism. So that's why the emphasis on no thinking, no thought. But then in Theravada, well, right thinking is the second one in a noble form path. And people, the Buddha say you need to investigate, right thinking. And so it's like there is two extreme, two different, tell to you two different things. I don't know which one is right. For me, that's when the more I research I study more about Pali Canon, the more confused I am, because the conflict of the teaching, and that's when I go to the last retreat, I cannot get concentrate, because that's very own question keep pop up my head. Is why is that? Why is the difference between the way Zen teach, the Zen master teach you, and then there is totally like opposite way the Buddha, even we still say own derived, own based on the Buddha's teaching, but like the Theravada school is completely different, and I cannot resolve the difference. And what I realize, the more I read Pali Canon, I attach to it. Like people criticize Pali Canon, I become irritated. I get annoyed. So the interesting is when my last retreat, I cannot get concentrate, and I think in the last section you're asking when should you investigate.
Yeah.
So it's like almost a month past, my mind cannot calm, because those very questions is keep pop up my head, and I have no answer. So it's almost over. That's why I explain you. I do investigate. So I sit back and I thinking. You have to think. You have to look back, and I have to examine back and say, what the difference between before I read the Pali Canon, why I have no problem before I don't have any problem with that. Now when I read the Pali Canon, then I have a lot of issue, a lot of doubt, and I keep looking, investigate back, and what I realize is all of them come to attachment to your knowledge, attachment to your understanding. What I introduced before is concept of Mahayana, the Buddha nature, the three, I don't know what, it's different the emptiness nature. And then when I realized that when I read the Pali Canon, I understand it, because I get the knowledge from that, I understand that, and then I compare the different, discrimination, that's what you do, discern, right? Make a judgment between why it's different. You make a judgment, discriminate, compare to different things, and you attach to the knowledge. What you learn, you understand, you attach to that. And that's what I realize is, that's very attachment. You just attach to different things once you learn. And what I realized, that's what Zen try to tell you, you do judgment, you compare. That's the discrimination, that enhances the attachment. The more you compare, the more you contrast. In the wrong way, it's attach more, make you attach more to your own view, your own increase your attachment. So that's why you investigate, and what I realize, those attachments that I have, and I realize the Zen teaching, that's what the Zen master tried to break down Ragyu is the habit of discrimination. That's what it is. I just doing that is compare and contrast and discriminate. And that's what the Zen master try to do is when they say something, you try to think, they say it's only wrong. That's when you try to think or contemplate, they say, oh, only far away from the Buddha nature, it's only wrong. But that's the Buddha in the Theravada tell you the same thing. At the end, you have to let it go. Well, let it go at the end. You may using your right view or right thinking to see the true nature, but at the end you have to let it go. So at the end you at the very basic state, when you get back to the true nature itself, there's no thinking. That's the same thing, but the Zen master tell you a direct thing, go straight to it, while the Buddha tell you the process, and at the end you reach the same thing. But instead of introduce the concept, the Buddha tell you, okay, here's the process, you practice it, and at the end you experience it. It's the same thing. That's what I realized is there is plus and pro, right? That's why in Pali Canon, if you ask what is Nirvana, the Buddha will never give you a positive or definite answer. What is Nirvana? People ask you, at that time, the other outside scholar come in ask 13 different questions that the Buddha refused to answer. A non-answer question is whether I don't know all 13 of them, but one of them is whether the cell and the body are the same, whether the Buddha exists or not exist after he passed away. Those is like metaphysical questions the Buddha refused to answer, and he says it's not helpful for you to know it, because it's not helpful for you to liberate your liberation from suffering. And he give you example of the poison arrow. I don't know whether you hear about the poison arrow.
Yeah.
So he say it's just like you get shot by a poison arrow, and your a good physician come in and he say, I can cure you from the poison arrow, and I need to do this. Get rid. You remove the arrow and get rid of this. But you say, no. Before you remove the poison arrow, I need who shot me. What the arrow make of? What kind of poison? Those kind of questions. Who shot me? Come from what gland? What color? And by the end, you have all those questions. You already dead. You already died from the poison. And the same thing he say, by asking metaphysical question, it's not help you to address your suffering issue. It's not address your attachment, and in fact, it's very increase your attachment to that. So that's why the Buddha not refuse to answer those. It doesn't mean that he not knowing, but it does. He say it's not helpful for you in terms of liberation, liberate from suffering. The same thing. That's why I say in Zen, the very Buddha nature concept they introduce only obstacle to the new student, because that's a very thing they try to understand, and they attach to that. They try to understand, and whatever they understand, they attach to that understanding, and that's a very thing that obstacle that they try to get rid of. So anyway, so what I go through that process, so do investigation and find out actually I attach to different view and the attachment is the thing that I need to recognize and let go of. And then at the end, there's no difference between the Zen and the Theravada. It's just different. The end are the same. The technique are different. The way they teach is different. I'm not saying which one is better. I think, from my point of view, the Buddha teaching, the Pali Canon is more practical. I have to say it's very practical. That's why in the Sutra he say what he teach. There's no extra, there's no less. It's just right. There's no extra wording, no less wording. It's just the right amount of wording. And that's what it is. So when I realize that on the doubt, on the question I have is completely resolved. And I know that when I reflect back, it's actually the Four Noble Paths I follow that I haven't recognized. Is you have to recognize the truth, right? The truth of suffering is that you have to see the true nature of your, the manifestation of your attachment, which is the suffering. And then you have to go back and find out the cause. The cause itself is the attachment. And when you see the truth, then when you see the truth, then the detachment, that's what the cessation of suffering is. You abandon or you let go the attachment, and that's what the third. When you let it go, then you know that you no longer attached to those issues, and that is the it's just follow the process of the Four Noble Paths. Is the truth of suffering, the cause suffering, and then you have to abandon the cause. By abandoning the cause, then it leads to cessation of suffering, because the cause leads to the consequence, and by get rid of the cause, automatically the consequence go away. So the key thing is you have to address the cause, not the consequence, because you try to address the consequence like you try to cut the tip of the branch, but not cut the root. The root is still there. Try to trim the branch, trim off the different branch. It's going back. It go different branch, different new leaf grow, and you never address all of the suffering. The only way you can do is look at the cause. That's why the Buddha say you have to get rid, abandon the cause. That automatically lead to cessation of suffering. And the path that help you to do that is the Eight Noble Path. Start with the right view. Right view is see the true nature thing is. Whether you say in terms of Four Noble Truth, whether you're talking about interdependent origination, whether you're talking about impermanent, well, the true nature of conditioned phenomenon is impermanent. See it arise, see it cease, see it change. What is going on to that thing, you just see it. What's going on to your mind, just aware of that. And then contemplation, right view, right? I think it's critical. You need to investigate, because I'm not saying like you just sit and then keep thinking about it impermanent. You can do contemplate for a while, but then by very observing the nature of what's going on to your mind, what's going on to your body, what's going on to your feeling, you will see the impermanence is there. You don't have to, it's just be mindful of it. You will see your emotion keep changing. one moment you happy, one moment you sad, one moment you feel alive, one moment you anger. So it keep changing, but be mindful of what's going on in your mind, and you will see impermanent is always there. It's always at the background. Maybe at the beginning, investigation, look at it, kind of like remind you yourself of the impermanent nature. But when you, I can't say my other monks like you brainwash yourself. I'm not saying you brainwash by make up something not real, but like just decondition yourself from the very wrong view that you have by just look at the true nature of things. The Buddha say we, the worldly people, have four views, four upside down view, upside down view. Well, we think impermanent, and we think it's impermanent. That's the first wrong view. You think that chair is permanent, well, it's impermanent. You think this earth is permanent, it's impermanent. You think this body is permanent, it's impermanent. So that's the very first wrong view that most people have, is think impermanent, and we think it's permanent. Things impermanent, we think it's permanent. And then think that's dissatisfaction, suffering, we think is satisfied or happy. Those the second view, because and if you investigate that, most of the time what you try to search for is happiness, but most of the time you associate happiness with things that's not last, right? You go out, enjoy different activities for what? For pleasure. Those not last long. So those pleasure is last only as long as you experience for a couple hours, but then after that it's gone. So those will not, because it's impermanent. Condition phenomena is impermanent. By itself it will cease. And if you hold on or desire to want it last forever, well, as by itself is only lead to suffering. And then the last view is thing is non-self, actionless, and we think it's self. And then there is different, like this body is impure, and we think it's pure. That's why I don't know, I'm not trying to criticize lady, but we spend a lot of time, take care of our hair, take care of our body, how our appearance look like. Well, that's what it is. But the Buddha tell you is this body's very own nature is impure. And if you look and examine and investigate, he say it's just a back up. I don't know what to use a word, but it's like a dung covered by a bag. Wrap it up. I think Chancha says it's a dung, the cow dung, and you wrap up nicely. That's a gift. But what it is underneath, what your food go in, coming out. I think nobody say it smell pleasant. So the Buddha say there's 9 open outlet of your body, and all of stuff coming out that 9 outlet is unpleasant. And that 9 outlets is your nose, nostril, 2 of them, your eye, your cry, your tear, your ear, that's 6, your mouth, and then the 2 at the bottom. And if you look at that, what coming out is you it's all dirty. So I think the key thing the Buddha tried is he break you from the attachment and the very deep, I have to say very strong attachment itself, the self concept, the ego. That's very hard to get rid of. Most of the arahants, the one that complete say they are no self. So I think I say a wide variety of objects. I don't know whether it's helpful or not, but so that's why I think investigation is very important. But I think at the beginning, because your mind is so disturbed, you will don't have your calm mind to actually do a good to have a right thinking. First, you have to establish the right view by seeing the true nature of things, by see the impermanent thing, and then you can do the right thinking. Investigation, that's why I say for now at the beginning, calm your mind, using your breathing, develop your mindfulness, and then once your mind calm, then you can start investigate, and especially start at the very basic. Whatever happened to yourself, whatever bother you, that is a very topic that you need to investigate. Even the happy thing, the thing that you really like, investigate them, why you like it. That's the attachment right there. That's a good topic for you to investigate. Thing that you don't like, that's a very topic that you look at. That's why I say thing that you don't like, you have to look at it. Most of us tendency, thing that we don't like, we try to ignore. We ignore it, sweep it under the rug, but that will not help you to liberate yourself from the attachment. Sweep under the rug is just ignoring it. You don't see the true nature of the attachment. So that's why thing you like, thing you don't like, you have to investigate both to see that your attachment is right there, to see the true nature thing is impermanent, it's constantly change, and it's non-self. Any questions? This is my last section. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm a guest monk here. So this is 3-month retreat is end 2 weeks ago. I just booked a ticket after Labor Day, is cheaper. So after the Labor Day, I will head back to Florida for my own retreat there. Brother Yatta will continue. So any comment, any suggestion you think we need to change in terms of the amount of time we sitting meditation, walking meditation, you need to change that. The amount of the section you need to change. The time, 7 o'clock is okay, or you need to move up. Let us know, because we design this is for you. So if it's better to you, then we will change that. Yes.
I was going to say, we've been doing it this time for like, I don't know how long, years. Like, maybe since, at least I've been coming since like 2012, 2011. Mm-hmm. So this time works.
Okay.
For people who can't, we always have the YouTube, so I enjoy it. And the time frame is just perfect too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Because I just afraid that some people, miss the dinner. So if they want to move up 1 hour at 6 o'clock, I just afraid that 6 o'clock people get out from work, they might not make it.
Traffic is.
Yeah, the traffic. That's why I think 7 is still best, but it's up to you. And then the amount of time, I think 1.5 hours is okay because 9 o'clock is probably too late.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, my best wish, I will come back. Well, if right condition, right time,
Yeah.
interdependent
Yeah.
origination.
Yeah.
When it's right, then thing will come. Thing will come and go. That's the law of impermanence. Thing will not last forever. But I appreciate for the opportunity that you guys give me. My best wish to you, continue your practice. Truly, because nobody can liberate you. It's you. That's my truth. The best teacher is nothing else. It's you. You are the best teacher. You are best friend, best teacher, worst enemy, everything. It's you. It's the worst enemy, believe me. A lot of things that you don't like about yourself, but if you can overcome it, it's the very teacher that teach you. I think the Buddha say the greatest conquer or the greatest achievement is achievement yourself. I think conquer yourself. Because there one story say, I think one of the I don't know the name of the king that he go out and conquer the neighbor. So when he come back, he win. He conquer that country. He come back, then he hear a monk exclaim that I'm the winner. I'm the greatest warrior. And the king asked, I should be the greatest warrior because I just conquered the neighbor. And the monk now say, no, because I just overcome my weakness. Because his weakness is he used to be a farmer. So he become a monk, but he keep his I don't know, one of the tool, the plow or something, so that if he come back to a lay person, he still have the tool. So he keep like go back and forth, and at the end he decide to throw his tool away to the river. Last after he throw away, he exclaim and say, I win, I'm a winner. So overcome your defilement, your weakness is actually the greatest achievement, I think. Over.
Thank you, Thay.
You're welcome. May this marriage distribute to all living beings, become enlightenment and attain the liberation. Namo Sakyamuni Buddha. Wow.
Have a safe journey.
Thank you. I'm still here. Just after Labor Day, the next